On a riptide, nowhere near. I wanna be here. I wanna be here. The wind in my eyes, the road in my ears. I wanna be here. I wanna be on a riptide, nowhere near. I wanna be here. I wanna be here. The wind in my eyes, the road in my ears. I wanna be here. I wanna be
Hey, and we're live. Yeah, let me get the tab up. That does that. Alright, yeah, welcome back to the show, everybody. This is Canna-Heads Season 2, Episode 2. If you want to know why it's Season 2, go to the last episode. It's your once-a-week podcast for the latest in cannabis, local, and national news every Sunday, starting at 7:30. We're pretty much on time, so I'm proud of ourselves for that.
Yeah.
Typically we go for an hour to an hour and a half. My name is Phil.
I'm Anthony.
And yeah, welcome back to the show, everybody. If you guys like newsy type podcasty like things, KRFF Radio Free Fargo 95.9 on Thursdays from 4 to 5 p.m. with Greg Wilson. If you're not in the Fargo-Moorhead area, you can go on their website, radiofreefargo.org, and listen live. At one point, they had a service that they were using that basically lets you listen to older episodes. It doesn't seem that is working anymore. So the episodes will be up on the podcasting platforms that same day, like in the evening. So if you want to listen then, you can also listen to it on the YouTube channel that you're watching this on. That not many people are watching on right now, but hey, yeah, you can watch it on YouTube. It's usually going to be the next day, so like it'll be on Fridays. I'm not promising a upload schedule like that. Sometimes it might be Saturday. It just kind of depends on how we get the file, or if I record it that day. It really just depends on stuff that's going on that day, specifically between 4 and 5 p.m. So, yeah, I have lunch at 4, so I can start recording, but that's not to say that I am not, like, on I work in phone things. So, like, if I'm in a campaign that, like, requires all of my attention, it's not something I can, like, listen in the background to. So, yeah, that was the overcomplicated explanation of that. But yeah, we have a whole bunch of news stories, but before we get into it, if you hit that like button down there or the subscribe button, so you can get notifications. If you do subscribe, hit the bell icon right next to it. Total YouTube spiel here. I'm sure you've heard it thousands of times if you watch YouTube. But yeah, hit the bell thing. You'll get notifications of every upload. If you don't hit the bell thing, it'll let you know. I think in an email. It actually, honestly, it really depends on if YouTube thinks this video that I am uploading is important enough to disturb you on your phone. It's a really dumb algorithm, YouTube algorithm. I can rant for hours about. Yeah. So like last episode, we were in the algorithm. This episode, it looks like it's not going to push us. So that is why there's only a couple people watching. But hey, you know, I used Steve Bannon in the title, so I should be able to get pushed probably after the stream's done.
We'll find out.
Yeah, and speaking of Steve Bannon, yeah, we're gonna mention it. You're gonna wonder, how does this have anything to do with cannabis? Well, let's just kind of explain what happened to him. Steve Bannon was Trump's former advisor, and he was also a part of the 2016 election campaign of his. And on Thursday, he was charged with defrauding donors on a private fund-raising effort called We Build the Wall. And We Build the Wall was actually it started off as kind of like a troll type campaign by some random person, and then I guess Bannon thought it was a great idea, so he got involved. And when the campaign was first made, they made promises of, hey, we're not going to take any money, so like this I'm working for free type of deal, but I just want to fund the wall. So it started off like that, and after a little while, Steve Bannon joined in, and they started kind of making this more official. And so they had raised $25 million, and prosecutors say that Bannon took nearly $1 million for personal expenses. They did a banquet deal for a retirement community in Arizona to raise funds, and those funds were supposed to be used to make hempcrete. Hempcrete is basically using hemp, mixing it with lime, and we're gonna watch a video here later, mixing it with lime, and it turns into like a strong concrete-like brick that also provides really, really good insulation. So like you don't need to blow insulation into like drywall. You would be able to build a wall without having drywall or anything in the middle. You can actually like insulate things.
It's an amazing product.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure why you'd want to build a outdoor wall out of hempcrete, but it also would probably be a little bit cheaper because hemp is, well, it's a weed. So it grows like crazy, so it's not expensive to basically create. And out of that, they would also be able to kind of be more green about it. So he actually did a interview with Vice in like 2019, I want to say. Let's see. Yeah, 2019, beginning of 2019, where he kind of talked a little bit about it. And here's the interview about that. If you're in the... Did you go into the live room? I should have totally reminded you that.
I did not. Give me 1 second, and I'll catch up
Scroll
with
down.
you.
It'll be like in the same chapter, but like right below it at the bottom. But yeah, so basically, he did an interview with Vice, and it's kind of interesting. And then I also have a video of how it's actually made, talking to some hempcrete manufacturer. So yeah, but hempcrete as an insulation or as a building block has been used actually since the 1990s, and that was in France. So it's a pretty often used thing. I don't think it's used in the US because, well, we just made hemp legal like what was that, 2000? I don't even remember
I'll
exactly,
look,
but yeah.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, so like hemp as a textile, as a building material, hasn't really been used a lot in the U.S., but it's used a lot in European countries. Yeah, there's a lot to it. Yeah, so
2014, by the way.
2014, yeah. So that was, yep. So here we go. Here's just a little couple clips. So
Rally support for his ongoing fight with Congress over the border wall. But some anti-immigration hardliners aren't waiting to see how that battle plays out.
I should have gotten a better time code on it. Here's the interview. Okay, I think this is where he's talking about it. Nope. Okay, there's some people doing Trump's favorite activity. There's like the actual interview part. It was just a piece, so it was like everything surrounding it, but...
Steve Bannon was the political mastermind behind...
wait, it's not letting me go forward. Okay, I give up. So basically, he talked about, he basically in the thing said, I think this plant has got tremendous entrepreneurial aspects to it, and its initiative. We're sitting there saying, hey, just a concrete wall or just a steel barrier, it has to be advanced technology. Because, yeah, that's why. I'm not really sure who is just like, you know what, I will support this wall. Like, even, it doesn't matter, like, wall or no wall type of thing. I'm just saying, voters aren't just like, well, you know what, if this wall is just made out of concrete and it's boring, I'm not going to vote for it, like, or vote for the person who wants to make it. Like, why does it have to be advanced? I just don't understand, but, yeah, basically, it needs to be advanced technology, and hemp is innovative in the United States, so this would be a really good use for it. And honestly, if we are going to build a wall, why don't we also legitimize hemp even more than it currently is? So, like, you got CBD and all that stuff. A lot of people, you know, they're like saying paper, you can make paper out of it. Like, why don't we just legitimize it, use it, and then people will be like, oh, you know what, this is actually not a bad textile to use, so why don't we actually start building more stuff with it? So it's a good thing that they were planning on doing it. I just found it hilariously funny that that was the first thing. The reason why I found it a little funny was they also, during the, what's the name of the people that got arrested? Igor and somebody else. They were doing like, they were basically bribing people, and that was like one of the things that were connected to Ukraine and all sorts of stuff. But long story short, they were bribing Las Vegas officials to getting a license for cannabis, which I found interesting. But basically, here's a nice little video of how to make hempcrete, if anything would work. I had this working. Oh, I know what I can do. Okay, there we go. Switch, skip video, there we go. Alright.
Alex Sparrow from UK Hempcrete, and we're about to make some hempcrete.
So yeah, this is them making it.
What we're gonna need.
So essentially, the three ingredients of it is something called hemp hurd, which is basically ground up hemp plant, lime, and water. That's all you need. And lime is easy to get because it, you know, it grows. Doesn't grow, but it like builds up in rock formations and stuff like that. So it's like not, these aren't hard items to get, is what I'm trying to say. And this is the reason why it's such a good and innovative idea, is because, first of all, the hemp plant, as far as the hemp hurd, once you get CBD out of it, or once you use it for its intended purpose that you're growing it for, what are you going to do with the rest leftover? Well, you can either burn it, which isn't great for the environment, or you can make hempcrete, or paper, or many of the other options that you can do with hemp.
Is Need about 1.5 buckets of the dry hemp shiv, which is the aggregate in hempcrete. And then we're going to need some hempcrete binder, which is this stuff. There's 4 or 5 different kinds available. This is a natural hydraulic lime, a very strong hydraulic
So there's the lime that they're using for that.
lime from the south of France. And it's so quick setting that we're going to have to put a retarder with it. And this is just food grade citric acid powder. So we're going to...
Which is also very easy to get if you ever made mozzarella.
Take some of that in there.
It doesn't need
And
much
then
too.
just mix that in dry before we wet it up. Cement is basically lime with other minerals added to it. In fact, this is a very hydraulic lime which comes from a class called natural cements, and Portland cement, which is what you're talking about, is really just a formulated version of this.
Yeah, so like they basically, I mean, lime again is super easy to get, so like you can totally, like you can make this in mass is what I'm trying to say.
Very common mineral.
More energy in the production process, yeah, and because this is quite quick setting, but because Portland cement is even harder and stronger and quicker setting, it doesn't reabsorb very much of the CO2 that was given off when you burnt the lime. So it's in two senses. It's more energy intensive. We're just going to mix equal quantities of the hempcrete binder and water so that we get a nice, we call it a slurry, and we make sure that the binder has got all of the water that it needs to take a set. And then you're going to help me by throwing the hemp in a little at a time while I mix it with a whisk. Put the water in.
Yeah, like it's super easy to
Lime,
make.
just watch out for the dust. So just mixing this first to like a smooth slurry.
Yeah, so like that's basically all it takes to make hempcrete, and hemp hurd is pretty easy to get. Go ahead.
It's incredibly cost effective as well.
Yeah. So like I think it's really cool that they decided to do that, and not to mention if it's cost effective like that, you can spread the dollar even further. You can build more wall with the same dollar. But basically like the thing is he's really smart in that aspect, really dumb in the whole, you know, I'm not going to take any money and completely lie to people and false advertising and take all the money. But at the same time, this was a campaign, I remember specifically, this was a campaign around 2016, it was when it blew up, that was in like major news. It was like it was a GoFundMe, and it was blowing up like crazy. I mean, it was polarizing, but at the same time, it also was really, really helpful for people to get into politics, which is kind of what I found interesting about it. Simply because like a lot of people weren't really political or kind of knew the goings on of politics and things that are changing in life, which is why I find it interesting, as kind of like an insight of what my life is going to be like next year type of thing. So it got a lot of people into it, and I guess this campaign, I mean, it made $25 million, which is insane. I think it was one of the largest. It might have gotten killed by another campaign, but it was one of the largest at the time. And there were people that, you know, they had different funny names that people would put, like, I forgot what the funny names were, but there was like, we don't support Wall, and they donated like $5. But like, there was some people that kind of memed on it and stuff like that. But at the same time, I mean, you're paying money to say that you don't support, you're supporting a wall that you're saying that you don't support, which is kind of dumb. But yeah. Another short little thing that they had, by the way, or not in this story, but there is new DEA guidelines regarding hemp and classification of hemp and how it's going to be treated by the DEA. That's going to be next week, just because there's a lot in there. And I read a conspiracy like theory about it, and I haven't had the chance to confirm it. Essentially, The conspiracy is the way that they worded the guidelines. They did a good thing for states in legalizing. They pretty much outlined like, hey, this is if it's hemp, if it's supposed to be hemp, you don't have to like, you can't take it to a state lab. It has to be a private lab that does it.
Yeah.
So because of that, if you're going to prosecute somebody on it, you're going to have to get a private lab that most states use only for like major investigations rather than just like I pulled somebody over and they're actually taking this to trial type of thing. That like the confirmation that it's like cannabis and stuff like that, because that test that they have on the side of the road just kind of identifies if there's THC in it, and hemp normally should have less than 0.03%. So, or maybe it was 0.3%. Either way, see, this is why I need to do a little bit more investigation. Either way, the way that they worded it made it harder for states to prosecute cannabis crimes just in general, but more in the aspect of the way that they kind of enforce it will make it harder for them to prosecute, but easier for them to identify. That like while they can't prosecute it, they can still seize it, and that it would like create some sort of like loophole that cops can or DEA can use to basically seize people's plants without any proof. Conspiracy theory, but at the same time, every conspiracy theory actually has a root that it comes out of, and that's interesting to me. But at the same time, I'm not saying I would agree or I would like follow a conspiracy theory, but I would more follow like this is the thinking and this might be a problem type of thing. So next week I'll kind of deep dive it, but there's also going to be possibly a video out of it too, which I'm planning on working on. Oh, you're all good. So yeah, stay tuned for that for next week. Again, subscribe. Just got to make that a thing. But yeah, those are just kind of like the mainstream news things, and now we can talk a little bit more about the crazy stories. So I think a lot of people may have seen this if you're a part of any cannabis groups on Facebook, or specifically the ones in North Dakota. It's on both of those groups, and it's basically a COVID-19 cure. I'm just going to say that word now so I can get hit in the algorithm. Literally, if you say COVID-19 and it gets subtitled, yeah, it's over there. But there is a story basically that there's going to be a possible treatment for symptoms. It's a, what's it called when they treat a symptom? I think it's called, no, not care. Supportive, I don't know. Long story short is this isn't a cure for COVID-19. And this isn't...
It's like a treatment?
Yeah. For a symptom of it. So this isn't a cure for COVID-19, nor is it a vaccine for COVID-19. And in fact, the reason why they're pushing this so hard is going to be for the people who don't feel comfortable with vaccines. So this is the good side of it. The bad side of it, I mean, we're also talking about a synthetic cannabinoid. So a synthetic cannabinoid drug for COVID-19 is in phase 1 clinical trials. Clinical, not clinical. Hey, that'd be like a... Yeah, anyway. Clinical trial. I am really sorry that Forbes' website is complete and utter dog shit. So this right here is about as far as you're going to want to read. Nothing really goes past this, because this is there, by the way. But basically the synthetic cannabinoid drug ARDS-003, which is kind of common for most clinical drugs. They're just named letters and numbers. This isn't going to be like, I'm going to prescribe you some ARDS-003. It was given approval for phase 1 trials. by a company called Tetra Biopharma. Okay, they are focused on cannabinoid driving drug discovery and development. So that's kind of like their claim to fame type of deal. It's going to be an injectable drug designed to help with acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is a thing that happens apparently when you have COVID. So the whole I injected 3 pots last night is real now. The thing is
4 marijuanas, thank you.
yeah. So the thing about that is, by the way, is yeah, okay, this is really bad for cannabis people, because well, it's injectable weed, but it's specifically cannabinoids, and it specifically touches one thing in the brain versus the two that are in your brain. That is specifically would basically the syndrome, acute respiratory distress syndrome, is triggered by a cytokine storm. I don't know what a cytokine is, but basically it is a dangerous over elevation of cytokines, which are proteins which signal the body to produce more inflammation, so swelling. So basically your NSAIDs like Tylenol, ibuprofen, Aleve, they kind of work on that similarly, but I think
Tylenol's actually not an NSAID.
isn't.
Nope.
What is
Just
it?
a pain reliever or painkiller.
Really? So it's
It'll kill pain, but it doesn't take away inflammation.
oh, I did not know that.
Mhm. Ibuprofen, naproxen, and there's another one, aspirin. Those are NSAIDs.
Yeah, I've always taken that whenever, like, if I hurt my like ankle or something like that. That's kind of what I've been taking, but I guess interesting.
Yeah, you definitely want to go for an NSAID if you're trying to take swelling down.
You know, it was really surprising to me, and this is the only time ibuprofen has ever helped me, as far as like in a significant way. Like it's helped me in like headaches and stuff like that, but in a significant way, when I got my wisdom tooth taken out. Surprisingly, that actually helps a lot with the pain.
Yep.
Like an insane amount. As in like you still feel it's there, but you don't like it's not that painful. Like it gets rid of that hollow feel, that hollow pain type of thing. I was shocked. But yeah, it's insane. I don't know, like my doctor was just like, yeah, so here's like I think it was like 15 oxys and take Tylenol after that. And honestly, the pain actually lasted a lot longer than 7 days or something like that is what he said. But yeah. But ARDS, it binds to CB2 receptors, which is so your brain has. So basically, okay, let's just go into brain. The thing I know about drugs the most, and this was actually taught to me in rehab. So basically, everything that gets you high, opiates, methamphetamines, cannabis. I hate having to put this all together like that. Psychedelics and everything like that in your brain. Your brain produces those chemicals, and stuff like cannabis, and that is, I think, the same thing that your brain produces. But like morphine and stuff like that is stronger than what your brain produces. So like in morphine, it's endorphins. Morphine is a stronger form of endorphins, and it binds to the receptor stronger. And basically everything that like does that to you, when you add more of it, and you basically need more of it to have the same effect, that's called tolerance. So basically your brain has two receptors, CB1 and CB2. Two receptors, primary ones at least, that cannabis, like CBD and THC and all the C's, as far as the CB, F, and J and all that stuff, basically all of those will bind to two different kinds of receptors. One receptor is more for THC, the other one is CB2, is more for CBD and all the variations of cannabinoids. They have two different aspects. They do two different things. One, CB1, is more the psychedelic type of thing, more of the general. It also helps with pain as well, but more of the general feel. Let's say that, because I don't want to say the other H word. And CB2 is the one that actually is what CBD oils and stuff like that do. They help with inflammation, which is what this will do. And they also help with anxiety and everything like that. They're not as pronounced in the psychedelic range, basically. So, this ARDS-003 binds to the CB2, and it's the receptor that modulates inflammation and cytokine activity, which would allow it to bring inflammation in ARDS back down to healthy levels. And unlike CB1, which is activated by THC and cannabis, they don't bring on any psychoactive high. I said the fucking word, god damn it. So yeah, they don't bring that. Essentially, this is almost like an injectable CBD. So that's the good thing in that. That yes, okay, it's injectable weed, but like at the same time, it doesn't get you high. So the Tetra biopharmaceutical guy, Chamberlain, points out that some, including remdesivir, do not lower mortality, or dexamethasone are also shown to be effective in a small number of patients. So this is basically more of a supportive medicine. That's what it is. That was the word. It's a supportive drug rather than a treatment, I guess, than anything. So you would take this to lower the respiratory distress syndrome. You wouldn't take this to cure COVID. You would only do this to support the symptoms, to lower the symptoms. And this one basically, while remdesivir is more of a antiviral, so it fights the virus head on, this one fights the symptoms. So he also suggests that even a successful vaccine emerges in the year, the probability of 100% efficacy, this is what I was talking about, the anti-vaxxers, within the population and provision for a long-term protective antibody response is unlikely. So
I love how you
essentially,
lightly touch on that, the anti-vaxxers.
essentially, yes, that's what this is. This is more of a stopgap until a vaccine comes out, and then, at the risk of alienating a whole fuck ton of people, the idiots that don't take vaccines. And I said what I said, and I don't care. That's my view. You have your own views. We're fine. That's all I gotta say. But yeah, so don't go into comments saying, but vaccines have mercury in them. We're not gonna have that discussion here.
We don't have time for this.
Yes, so yeah, basically, this is going to be more for the supportive medicine, which, it's good for until we have a vaccine, and also for even if it's a different strain or a different form that a vaccine doesn't cover or anything like that as well, this would be a treatment for that as well. So it's not only for COVID-19, this will be for basically anything that has a respiratory distress in it, and this might even be something that when overdoses happen, as far as with opiates, this could be a cure for that. Well, not a cure for opiate overdoses, but a cure for the symptoms that happen after an overdose. So this is basically going to be helpful for a lot of things. Phase 1 is basically a test the drug on healthy men and women to confirm that it's safe and tolerable, and learn more about how it's absorbed and metabolized by the body. So this is more not going to be used for patients right now, but it's going to be basically like, hey, does this kill people, is basically what this study does. So rip to anybody who is in phase 1 studies, I guess. But yeah, phase 2 is where they plan for that to be on the second quarter of 2021, and to begin to assess the safety and tolerability for those with COVID-19. And they also, in phase 2A, I guess is what it's called, they would allow the release of the drug to physicians making an emergency access type of request through the FDA. So this would be basically, once it hits phase 2, it might not be like fully proven, but if a doctor feels like they have enough evidence to support that this is a helpful thing to them, they would be able to get a request in through the FDA, which will then possibly release it. I think this is kind of when they like kind of have like, okay, this is the information that we have, this is the information you gave us, this is what we know about it, yeah, we agree type of thing. Phase 3, which they hope to start by the end of 2021, hopefully we have a vaccine by that point, will be they will be able to test the efficacy of the drug to alleviate or prevent pulmonary complications like ARDS. So this would be also like a preventative. So like if you have, I know they don't do this anymore, but back when I got a lot of bronchitis, one of the things that they'd always prescribe you is an inhaler, an antibiotic, specifically the Z-Pak, and I think those are the only things that you walked out of the thing with. But basically, this would be in that type of arsenal. So you would be able to take this if you like come in and you have a higher chance of actually having respiratory distress. This would be that. So yeah, if successful, Tetra will be able to offer governments the first cannabinoid-derived drug with the potential to manage the cytokine storm induced by COVID-19. So like that, a lot of people, and this is what I've seen a lot of people, and this is what I thought in the morning as well when I saw it for like the 8th time. Oh God, they're making injectable weed. Like, this is the worst thing in the entire world. This is kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning with hempcrete. If anything, while yes, it's bad and could be really bad for messaging, the good thing about it is it legitimizes cannabis in a more general form, specifically with medicinal. So when it comes to medical cannabis, when it comes to even like CBD and everything like that, this would legitimize it more to the general public. This would be something that doctors would actually believe in once this goes through all these trials, if it does go through all these trials. That would basically add a little bit more weight to, hey, this would be a good thing to be able to prescribe and or have people walk off the street, kind of like Tylenol. So this is a good thing, is what I'm trying to say.
Right, it sounds and looks scary.
Right. And I think that's what a lot of people, because this is the exact article that I've seen posted over and over again. Surprisingly, it's not on Marijuana Moment. It's not on Leafly. It's on Forbes, apparently, which is actually kind of something to say about Forbes as far as like with their news reporting. Apparently they are more into like this specific writer. I think her, yeah. I'm a writer and educator focused on bringing scientifically backed education on cannabis and wellness to the public. So like, it's crazy that this was on Forbes, but at the same time, it's not a terrible thing, but I can also see how it turns into a negative impact. Because now, when somebody says, you know, I just inject, like, oh, well, you know, druggies are just going to inject this shit type of thing, I can totally see somebody being like, well, no, there's no such thing as injectable weed, and then them turning around and be like, well, look, this story, for instance.
Yeah.
So that's a way that it would hurt. But in the end, this would also be used in a more general sense. I mean, we do have a medical cannabis pill, Marinol, But this would be more like, hey, not only is THC helpful for, I think it's usually prescribed for PTSD, I think is what Marinol is for, and
Marinol. Marinol's like the go-to for anything cannabis related in terms of pill.
Well, yeah, but what is it normally prescribed for? Pain, or is it for like PTSD and nightmares and stuff like that? So I can imagine both. But we all know the way that people view cannabis, they're just gonna only have one use, and then maybe some off-label. But yeah, like, I can see that being bad, but at the same time, this will be like, hey, you know what, during that COVID-19 pandemic thing, and I'm hoping you're saying that by the end of the year, like, well, at the beginning of next year type of thing, I'm hoping we're saying that. Please make that happen. Whoever is in charge of vaccines, please. I'm going crazy.
And to answer your question, Marinol is used to treat the loss of appetite that causes weight loss in people with AIDS, and it's also commonly used as a severe anti-nausea and vomiting caused by cancer and chemotherapy.
Okay, so it's not even for pain? I
Nope.
suppose the pain part is more for the CBD and the cannabinoids, and this is just straight THC, but...
It says this may be habit forming.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean,
It is.
like the cannabis, that's a still gray area kind of thing, but it's like maybe it's more so the shit you put in it.
Okay, so, yeah. But I think this might be the unpopular opinion. But I think while there is no physical dependence, there is a form of mental dependence.
Yeah.
It's the same, well, alcohol has physical dependence, but it's also a reason why people who aren't, alcoholics, basically, people who aren't that they can pick up and drop alcohol, but at the same time, there's some people who can't, and that, like, inner to joining, or to getting into, like, that hole is more for a mental type thing. And while there's no physical withdrawal, there is mental in the form of being bored. And it does affect sleep a little bit, but not by much.
Mm-hmm.
But like it can be a psychological addiction. I hate to use the word addiction because that's not really what it is. Because I think the addiction value is a little too a little too far on that. I think it's more of the mental or psychological dependence to it, as in like an escape, essentially. Well, that's just my view. Like, yeah. What do you think?
I agree.
Yeah. I don't know. It's the unpopular opinion by a lot of people, surprisingly. Because I try to keep that one not too known, but at the same time, I think I've said it multiple times. But like, I've had people like freak out and be like, "Well, no, it's on no paper." Well, I'm sure it is on a paper somewhere. I'm sure that there's some sort of medical literature out there that basically says that you can get addicted to water in the same form of that. So, yeah.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I've seen it myself plenty of times. There's definitely a psychological dependence that you can develop.
Right. I've also noticed that my sky is not looping. I'm sorry about that. It's looping very slowly. I'm sorry. That bugged me for a minute. I was paying attention. It's just like I saw that out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, that's weird. But yeah, like I think there's definitely that aspect of it, and I think a lot of people seem to kind of look past that, and that's like not everything that there's people who are dependent on like running and like exercise. There's people who are dependent on healthy amounts of food and like different kinds of food. It's not a bad thing to be, well, it's not a terrible thing to be dependent on something as a form of way to comfort yourself. Like there's at some point there's no way to admit that, hey, I need nothing to comfort myself. There's no way to do that. So yeah, that's a very negative form of life to look at, but whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I found this interesting in the fact that like everybody was posting this, and I'm like, and they all had the whole great. They made injectable cannabis, and in fact, I think I did a meme of it, which honestly I kind of want to show. I'm gonna show my meme. I mean, it is a funny one. Here we go. Let me see. Oh, I think I can do it this way. Let's see. Does this work? Yes, it does. Alright, cool. So, like, this was my, like, you know, the tried and tested meme format of this, but basically, we need to solve COVID. It's the boardroom meme. We need to solve COVID. You know, two people being like, antivirals, vaccines, injectable weed, and they kick them out of the boardroom. But, yeah. I found it funny. Alright, yeah. Go back to where you were. But yeah, injectable weed is a thing now, but again, not negative in that aspect, so. I don't know, if you disagree, by the way, feel free to comment it. You know, if you're watching, you can also comment in the chat. There's only one person watching, and it's probably me. But yeah, like, no, it's... If you have a different view on any of that, by the way, like talking about addiction, well, again, addiction is a really, really powerful word, and I don't think I want to add that. If you want to talk about injectable weed and how it's bad, please state your comment. State it in the comment. I'd be more than happy to reply. I am pretty much always on YouTube, so I probably reply pretty quick. But yeah. New Jersey, and this is going to be a common theme here on this. New Jersey voters, they did a study. It seems like this week has just been release studies week. But
I've heard the studies a lot too.
There was a lot of them this week, though. Is this the thing? No, this isn't the thing. There we go. Alright, how do I trigger that? Sorry. I had a thing set up. Oh. Boom. Alright. New Jersey voters want legal marijuana and favor higher taxes on sales. The new poll shows that Branch Eschler showed that 66% of likely voters would back the legalization measure that's on their ballot right now for November. And they were asked whether adult use cannabis should have a higher sales tax rate than other goods. And voters basically, so basically right now their other goods is 6.625%, and about 55% said that marijuana should be taxed higher. And yeah, so they also showed that 73% said that New Jersey should ensure minorities have a fair and equal access to the business opportunities. This is what happened, I think it wasn't in Maine, it was in like Vermont or something like that, where they, as far as funding for it, they saw that there was a much lower percentage of minorities, and so much so that there was a business that just opened up, and it was the first minority-owned dispensary. It wasn't the first minority ran production in just general. There was like different grow ops, but this was into the dispensary aspect, the customer side, the customer-facing side. So they basically 73% of people aren't racist. And they support allowing social consumption, or the support for allowing social consumption sites. They did dip to 46.6% in that survey. I'm not really sure why anybody would think that that unpopular opinion again. I'm not really sure why anybody would think that social consumption sites, like, I understand like a bar type of experience. But let's like not put the cart before the horse here. Let's get it legalized first. But yeah, they did that Um, that part of there. 55% said that that they would allow online purchases and deliveries of cannabis should be allowed. I think we can think, wow, can it stop scrolling now? Okay. I think that is more of COVID-19 response in that aspect. And they also, 66% said people with a prior low-level cannabis convictions should be able to have their records expunged, which is pretty nice for that because it's not very common that it's kind of an all-inclusive. They also, again, I don't know why this is a question that they asked, but they identified Democrats are more likely to support legalization by the tune of 77%, with the majority of Republicans, 56%, and independents, 58%, also favor the policy change. So they had 3 different studies, essentially, and I'm not sure what their picking order was as far as percentages of Democrats and all that stuff, but they noticed that they had a higher percentage by people who identify as Democrat. And they did, so in June, they did decriminalize up to 2 ounces, but this is kind of really good news, and it's surprising because there's actually a whole bunch of studies that came out this week. But yeah, like, I mean, there's not too much to say. It's more interesting the fact that it's interesting, but it's not a question that I feel like they should have asked. But the party nomination part of it, it's interesting that there's such a high amount of Republicans that are viewing it. But again, this actually is just more proof that it's a bipartisan issue, that there's no for or against groups type of deal. It's more of just like people being uninformed about it, because usually these studies kind of have like a pre-question, like they ask. I used to work in market research, so they start asking it by like, hey, what do you know, type of thing. Based on what you know, are you for or against this? And then they do an education portion, and then they ask the same questions again. And I think the race question, I feel, is probably a control question. So like that's the only way I can explain that one away. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting number to just, I don't know why you'd put that on your paper, but yeah, it's an interesting question that they asked, that's for sure. Social consumption sites, it dipped 46.6%. I'm not sure what it was beforehand, but cart before the horse again. I feel like that's probably why people had such a negative response to it, because they don't already know what the landscape looks just in general with legalization. They kind of want to know that type of information before they make a decision on public consumption. But it's interesting that they asked that as well. But yeah, it's crazy. This basically, and the other study as well, it's all pro cannabis. It comes out very pro cannabis, and honestly, it's the last question. It's the last story, or not the last one, but one of them went towards the end, that it's not only citizens, it's people in positions of authority. So like prosecutors is the next study that I saw. But yeah, and not to mention they favor higher taxes on states. I'm not sure what the other goods nomination is, but if it's 6.625% for alcohol, for instance, as far as state tax, not municipal, that, I mean, that's even more proof that, hey, they all see the fact that this will help with states having debt, and also that people would be willing to pay more for it to be legal. It's, the tax is more just like, I would be willing to give up more money for me not to have to pay more money for a ticket. So yeah, it's interesting to see.
It is. People have proven time and time again in order to have the freedom to do it, they'll pay.
Yeah. And if anything, it would probably be that type of a tax would also be a good disincentive for people to be wasteful with it as well. I mean, I guess if you're buying in bulk type of thing, but it's also like just a higher barrier of entry. So like, kid off the street, under age, doesn't just waltz on in and show a fake ID. It'd be a little bit. I mean, it's not a huge tax type of deal, but at the same time, it would just be like another barrier for people who are against it to feel better about themselves and sleep better at night. But, which is kind of what like the sin tax is. Something for people who are against it to sleep better at night. But, but yeah, they show that. I mean, 55%, like they're basically 66%. So if they had an election today, or whenever the study was done, it would have passed. And it's already on their ballot, so it's a pretty. I mean, it's not a home run right now because anything can change between today and November, but it basically is signaling to lawmakers of, hey, we should probably start working on figuring out, how we're going to do this as far as where we're going to have locations and licenses and everything like that. This is basically that signal, like, hey, it's going to happen.
It's not an if, it's a when.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. I mean, obviously, don't just expect it to be a win on November, but like, it's a very good chance. So we'll probably be talking about New Jersey legalizing, and yeah, good for them.
While we're sitting here,
Hopefully North Dakota's next. There's going to be also a reoccurring theme about North Dakota, specifically about 4001 that I will be mentioning every week, just to make sure everybody knows exactly what it is. Texas somehow figured out a way to fuck up hemp. They legalized the crop last year, hemp, and the law was written in a way that only prohibited the manufacturing of smokable hemp. So basically, as far as manufacturing it, so a lot of dispensaries or a lot of smoke shops and stuff like that were like, okay, well, we can't grow it in Texas, but I'll just get it from another state and then I'll sell it. Which is a little weird because how do you know that this hemp or this, hemp that you're seeing is being used to be manufactured for smoking rather than into an oil? Like, it comes from the same thing.
Yeah.
But they issued a regulation that would go into effect earlier this month that would further and explicitly forbid the sale of any smokable hemp products just in general. So that loophole of let's get it from out of state got covered up. A couple of not dispensaries, but a lot of manufacturers, 3 of them specifically, sued in court, and they argued that the ban is unconstitutional, and asked the court to make it so that they can produce and sell the items in state. They were granted a TRO, or temporary restraining order, that basically allows them to suspend that portion of the law until it can be heard in court. So it's kind of like, you got my attention. I side with you. That's not to say I agree with you right now. And we want to allow.
Smack the pause button on it.
Huh?
Basically, smacking a pause button on it.
Yeah. And so that is going to expire on September 2nd. So they don't have too long. But the court will hold a hearing by then for them to be granted a temporary injunctive relief, which is essentially the next step, as in okay, you got me even more on your side type of thing. This is more for long term. And that's kind of like solidifying the restraining order, essentially. Which is weird to call it a restraining order when it's like, yeah. I mean, restrain technically as a word is probably like to hold back or stop, but when I think a restraining order, I think like you can't go within 6 feet of me. But the plaintiffs in the case say that the original ban in processing and manufacturing smokable hemp, and not just regulators' sales blocking, violates the state's constitution's protections for economic freedom, which is, I mean, that's a pretty decent constitution if it has that. But yeah, they say basically like, hey, this is basically making it so that the state is interfering with my business, which I think is one of the constitutional protections in the state. They also argued that they don't have the authority to expand the ban on selling these products more for manufacturing them. And they further went on to, well, okay, they also prohibited sales, in-state sales, creating expensive logistical problems. Their lawsuit basically states that smokable hemp flower can't be distinguished from hemp grown for other purposes, and so that the ban creates a risk of companies mislabeling their products to avoid the prohibition, which is, like, I mean...
That's the first thing I would have expected, was them to just label it as something else.
Yeah, and that's a huge issue, like, the way that the law was written in the first place was a little bit weird, but then to kind of take it one step further and not allowing it to be sold in the States is kind of what escalated it, because essentially the people that sued were dispensary owners, not manufacturers, that they kind of basically said, well, us three, we do this, we don't sell this anymore because it's illegal and we don't want to be breaking the law, but this is opening up a huge loophole for just about anybody to relabel it as incense and everything like that. And we all know incense is not, when it was in smoke shops, incense, I mean, there are some that, you know, make your room smell good, but there's also a form of incense that was not to make your room smell better. We call that spice. And this is kind of opening up that type of a loophole of not for human consumption. This is just incense. Which is just bad all around. As far as what that does, that's not going to be good. And they also said, you know, to law enforcement, it's virtually indistinguishable between hemp and marijuana. And they've been basically saying that that they can't consistently prosecute individuals without conducting the lab analysis of seized cannabis for THC, which is kind of what I was talking about before, where they kind of, well, at first what I was talking about, they kind of don't want to, like, the whole state not being able to test. When I was talking about, like, the DEA rules, this is kind of like that type of loophole as well. Not to mention, like, those roadside tests, again, when they do that, it's like a little packet. I've had it done to me a couple times. It's like a little packet, you put the thing, you put your nug in there, and then they break it, and it turns a certain color or something like that. Obviously, you can't really watch them doing it when you're, you know, basically, like, they're in the car type of thing. But basically, that's kind of what it is. Hemp has THC in it. It will test positive for THC. There's different tests, and some tests can have the ability to notice what is over 0.03, but those are a lot harder and a lot more expensive because they have to be a lot more accurate. This one, that's very common, makes it harder. So if you get pulled over and an officer says, "What's that?" and you say it's smokable hemp, even if it was smokable hemp, it would still test positive, which makes it a lot harder for cops to, or for prosecutors to prosecute. And in February, actually, state officials announced that labs won't be performing testing in misdemeanor cases anymore. So it's kind of turning into a forced legalization almost, as far as with hemp, and possible tightening of the limits for decrim. But essentially, it's 4 companies. No. Yeah, so I guess 4 companies. It wasn't 3 companies that filed suit, but yeah, it's kind of an interesting suit in the aspect of like, what's such a big deal about smokable hemp?
I don't understand.
Like,
It's basically like a CBD flower is what it
yeah,
is.
yeah, it's exactly
It's
that.
like, I don't know, man.
I mean, if anything,
They've made over the dumbest things.
yeah, and honestly, I think I've heard, um, I've only done a pre-roll once, like CBD pre-roll, but it does help with, uh, a kind of like a good time waster type of deal, like, not a time waster, but like, instead of just putting like oil under your tongue and sitting there for a couple minutes, it's an actual action. So it's kind of like a more enjoying experience smoking it or rolling it up and all that stuff. But yeah, like I don't understand what the big deal is with hemp. Maybe they just don't want people in cars when they get pulled over to be like, that's hemp, and there being no proof that it's hemp, which I think is why they made it so that it can't be even sold in the States, which is, first of all, when you grow it, it's going to look exactly the same in a wet form, and in order for you to extract the CBD, one of the ways that you can do it is by drying it, whereas in other ways, I think it's some, like an ethanol type of thing where they spray it into it, but there's really no distinction between smokable and going to be, broken down into an oil or broken down into a balm and all that stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's just prosecutors and lawmakers being stupid. But, yeah.
I agree, man.
So, Vermont, for some reason the East Coast is having way huge issues with legalization. Maine last week. Vermont had a spat over, they did have a bill that was going through that passed the House, and in Senate it was looked completely different. So they announced on Wednesday that they would be working to finalize the bill by the end of the month, but the House had inserted a section in their version of the marijuana bill that would allow police to pull people over for not wearing seatbelts. Which, last I checked, this might be a little bit off, but I'm pretty sure an officer can pull you over for not wearing a seatbelt. Any other time? Not 1,000%.
Actually, there's a lot of states, and I'm pretty sure North Dakota is one of them where you can't be pulled over simply for your seatbelt. Or no, maybe North Dakota is one, but like Nebraska, that's a good example. Where,
Really?
Yep, you have to be pulled over for something else in order to get nailed for a seatbelt.
Yeah, but then all the cop has to say is, "Oh, you took that turn weird."
Yeah, and yeah, they could tailpipe chase you for it, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's an actual thing.
Huh. All right. Well, I learned something new.
I
I
was
guess
8 years old.
Yeah. So I guess this this bill would allow police to pull people over for not wearing a seatbelt. They argued that allowing police to pull people over for failing to wear a seatbelt would lead to unnecessary police encounters, go figure, and are likely to have a racial disparity. Yeah, disparity. It says racially disparate impact. Either way, racism. uh, yeah. Welcome to 2020. So yeah, police will look for any reason that they can pull over a car. Once you open this door, you're going to radically increase the number of stops, and that's going to have an impact, especially on people of color. Not really sure how that has much to do with it, but yeah, that's what one of the lawmakers said. If the seatbelt dispute and other outstanding issues, so it's not only the seatbelt issue, but there's other outstanding issues between the two chambers are ultimately resolved, it would be only a matter of weeks before cannabis is legalized for commerce. And it'll then go to the governor's desk. The committee plans to meet again on August 24th, so tomorrow, and again at the end of the month, the 31st, which is when they will try to finalize the bill. The House, basically, also the other issues that they're having is the House wants to make it so that individual jurisdictions have to proactively opt in to allowing cannabis businesses, whereas the other side, the Senate, wants businesses to be allowed by default and having municipalities opt out of having them in their state. Which, I mean, it's weird that it's in that type of leaning order, as far as, I don't know, like usually the general consensus with Republicans and Democrats is different, but like, I feel like those are flipped. It's more liberal than conservative of a view. And the committee plans to meet again. I said that part again. But the political director for the MPP in New England told Marijuana Moment that based on what we heard today, it sounds like there is a good chance that the committee will agree on final details by the end of the month. So that this type of a spat over seatbelts, and also for as far as how the licensing will work, is pretty minimal and will probably pass in a easier fashion. So that is good. My music is way too loud right now. Okay. So there's, I mean, it's essentially two different views, but at the same time, like, this is kind of, it's a seatbelt violation. Like, first of all, why did that make it into a cannabis bill?
Yeah, it's random.
Right. Like, I don't understand why it had to be there, but, I mean, if that was a way for them to slip something in type of deal, it's a seatbelt issue. It can... People aren't going to be more mad. I mean, it might be like me, where I thought that you can get pulled over for not having a seatbelt for, like, in every state. I thought that that's common knowledge to wear your seatbelt while driving a car. But also, like, as far as the way that businesses being able to opt, or municipalities being able to opt in and out, that's also, I feel like that should be a bigger issue rather than seatbelts. But whether or not a municipality has to opt in or out, it really doesn't change if they can opt in or out, because I'm pretty sure if you wanted to not have any of those in your city, you would probably already be on the ball on that. It's probably not, like, too difficult to do, but then again, I have no idea how cities do this type of a law thing, but yeah. So basically, Vermont is probably going to legalize soon, which is good. And even weirder is that top state cops, essentially, like, the there's a law enforcement action partnership, which is the name of it. They had talked, they had written a letter. I'm gonna kind of read the first page of it. Let's pull that up. There we go. All right. So they had written a letter to Senate and House, basically pushing for the MORE Act, So as individuals and organizations composed of current and retired law enforcement professionals, including police officers, judges, prosecutors, and others, we publicly endorse the Marijuana Opportunity and Reinvestment Act. Basically they believe that responsible regulation and control of marijuana will be more beneficial to society than prohibiting and criminalizing it. The COVID-19 pandemic shines a bright light on why this kind of reform is as urgent as ever as a matter of public health, safety, and better use of much-needed resources. What that tells me is a bunch of cops are getting really, really annoyed that they have to drive out to somebody's house over a suspicious smell.
Yep.
And
How much time and resources have been wasted on something cannabis related when there was actual crime occurring?
oh, I have an idea. Grand Forks Police. So Grand Forks has this really, really cool thing where about the next day you can see what the common calls for service was. And so, just to derail this just a little bit. Oh, okay. Yeah, because this is Chrome and not Firefox. Okay. So they have, calls for service. Top 30 call types reported. Let's see if suspicious smell or cannabis is on here. Motorist, loud music, parking, unwanted subject, suspicious activity. I mean, that's one of
That's
the
a
things
big
that
one right there.
yeah, suspicious activity is common. Fireworks, extra patrol, domestic harassment, civil matters, found property, fraud.
Maybe
See
they
what
got
else.
smart enough and realized the backlash or like the negative public perception.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy because suspicious activity, 1,666. And this is, I think, per month. I think this is based on a per month basis. But yeah, like you can see what the common one is. Location check, I think that's when officers are just kind of checking in. Is that what it is, I'm guessing?
That's more probably like well checks or like a well-being check.
No, they had a welfare check.
Oh,
I'm thinking location checks are more of like, I'm entering south side of town or whatever. However they district it or whatever.
oh yeah.
I think that's what that is. Because when you do look at their calls for service, there's a PDF that you can actually get, which runs daily. Daily report. There it is. Oh, I wonder if this might have this. Okay, so this has that. Oh, you can't do it by that. Also on North Dakota's website, you can also look up the common cases. But yeah, like location check. This is a location check. It doesn't say what it is or anything like that, or if anything happened, but I think this is just like I'm entering this part type of deal. But yeah, like you can see all the calls for that day, from the 5th to the 12th, so for the week. Yeah, just a fun, interesting thing. But you can also check if your police department also has it. They might. It's basically calls for service is what you want to Google. Your name of your city, calls for service. But back to this. So they requested that they swiftly bring this critical legislation to the House floor for a vote in September. The House Judiciary Committee made history by supporting the MORE Act and becoming the first congressional body to vote in favor of descheduling marijuana. Indeed, legalizing, regulating, and controlling marijuana at the federal level is an opportunity to repair and strengthen the relationships between us and the people we serve, to shift public resources towards the most serious crimes, to reduce the size and influence of the illicit market, and to usher in a new era of health-centered approaches, rather than criminal punishment, for people who use drugs. That's a weird way of saying that, but whatever, I'll take it.
Yeah.
The thing that's really interesting is the fact that they are talking about how it would be more beneficial to society and prohibiting and criminalizing it, and that they would they're giving up the better use of much needed resources. They're giving up the very, very common line of pulling somebody over and saying, I smell something, and it not being anything. They just are alerting you that they can smell, and that now they can search, or request you to search, which is a very, very common method. Police encounters, just in general, are basically a conversation of what kind of rights can I get this person to give up.
And one thing I'm really loving is how judges more and more are tossing out searches and seizures that were based on they smelled something.
Right. Yeah, because like there was, okay, this is a funny one. This one actually happened to me during my felony arrest. The reason we got pulled over in a car, it's a long story, but whatever. The reason why that they thought cannabis was involved in that stop was because the driver of the vehicle had a green tongue. And I didn't think that this was a real thing. This is an actual thing that got outlawed, or that got, I don't know, struck in, or that kind of training was struck in like 2014 or something.
Okay.
So she had a green tongue, which to the officer, and before this is said, the officer in the complaint said that, you know, I have taken X amount of hours of training, I am certified in being an asshole, and that in his training, that they were taught that somebody who had just gotten done smoking, their tongue turns green. This was an actual thing that was taught to officers. They're giving up this type of like stupidity of like, I smelled something.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, cannabis does have a distinct smell. I get that. But how many times have you like smelled something and been like, oh, is this lavender, or is this, you know, something else? I don't know, because I don't have a sense of smell, but I know a lot of people that, you know, they ask like, the smell's good, what is it? That type of a question, if cannabis was so distinct, people wouldn't be asking, what is it? Sense of smell is, I don't have it, so I don't know, but a sense of smell is kind of like subjective. I don't know how else to explain it. Essentially, it's not a surefire thing of identifying something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so 4 states' attorneys generals and about 50 other current and former law enforcement officers sent a letter to congressional leadership on Wednesday endorsing a federal marijuana legalization bill, and asked the House to vote on it next month. And in this thing, it's kind of really interesting. They basically say a significant driver of public distrust in law enforcement is our focus on low-level marijuana arrests. Really, that's a shock to me. I couldn't imagine why anybody that any time that they have an encounter with an officer over something that they're doing to themselves and not hurting anybody for is negative. I can't imagine that. The valuable part of the justice system, we police are already met with animosity every day. I mean, it could just be the fact that you never really meet a police officer on your best day. The effectiveness and morale should not suffer unnecessary. If marijuana had never been criminalized, many more Americans would greet us with warmth, cooperation, rather than fear and malice. Without the trust of the people we serve, we lose a valuable crime-fighting resource. When community members refuse to talk to us, fail to present evidence, or even to report crime, our jobs become much more difficult. Legalizing marijuana will help alleviate this tension and allow us to focus on our shared priorities, responding to emergencies and curbing serious crime. I mean, yeah. But this also comes after a poll showing that 62% of likely voters, including 60% of Republicans, support the MORE Act and its provisions. So, like, that's a pretty bipartisan support for this. The Law Enforcement Action Partnership, basically what we're reading here, I think I already read that one. They also include the attorney generals from Delaware, Minnesota, New York, and Oregon, and also have a former attorney general of Ohio, and the National Black Police Association had joined in, and dozens of other former and current prosecutors and police officials. It's a huge thing. If you go towards the end here, yeah, these are all of the people. Oh, shoot, I'm not on that screen. Holy shit. Okay. These are all of the people. So this is the organizations that they're a part of, and this is all of them. So, the 58% of likely voters, including 54% of Republicans, feel that the federal government should legalize the use and sale of cannabis. When told about the specifics of the MORE Act, that support increases to 62% overall. Nearly 7 in 10 likely voters agreed that, at the very least, the federal government should allow states to set their own marijuana policies without intervention, which is kind of a big deal. See the States Act. Essentially, like, at least let people fucking deposit money
Yeah.
in a legalized state. The least we can do with that. The chief sponsor in the House is Nadler, and the Senator Kamala Harris is the one that's carrying the Senate version. It would deschedule cannabis, expunge the records of those with prior cannabis convictions, and impose a federal 5% tax on sales revenue, from which would be reinvested into communities. This is a really weird wording of it. Most impacted by the drug war. So, statistically, whichever state and or city that has the most convictions for drugs would get a portion of the money. It's a really weird wording of it, and it's really weird how they're going to be deciding that, but let's at least get past one thing before we figure out how money should be divvied up. But basically, yeah, so this would be federal legalization in the aspect of not it being federally illegal, which will make it easier for states to legalize. So this passing does not mean that it passes and the next day you can totally, buy it wherever you want. Gas stations will have it and everything like that. No, states will still have to set up an infrastructure and a way of testing and manufacturing and everything like that, and it'll be easier for them to pass laws to do that. This is more of making it so that it's easier for banks to deal with cannabis businesses, make it so that there's a tax on it, because right now states are the only ones taxing. It would raise prices. That's the unfortunate part, but kind of like what we were saying before, many people would be more than happy to spend some money to have that freedom of being able to buy it legally, not having to deal with people, or not having to go to a doctor and getting it recommended to you, because that's a weird way of saying, the ability to, it's just makes it a lot easier for everybody. It also would be a resentencing for those incarcerated for marijuana offenses, as well as to protect immigrants from being denied citizenship over cannabis, and prevent federal agencies from denying public benefits or security clearances due to its use. So HUD money, security clearances just in general, as far as because actually, surprisingly, anytime that you have to interact with the government in a official capacity of like doing a service for them, you usually have to get a clearance for that. Like I at one point applied for one. I was doing computer work, and there was a job at the airport here in Grand Forks, and I needed that. But yeah, so it's interesting that this is kind of turning into reality. If you asked me a couple months ago if I think it would be federally legalized, I would say chances are no. There's a lot of there was a lot of support for the MORE Act. Don't get me wrong, but when I had mentioned the State Safe Act, that's the one, Safe Act, the banking access one. When I had mentioned that one, the MORE Act was also going through, and states was as well. And it seems like as far as the measures that are going through, or the bills that are going through, it seems like these are the two. So, yeah, the whole it having to be done during cannabis is a little weird in my opinion. Or during COVID, sorry, not during cannabis. During the cannabis pandemic, where
That would probably be the most enjoyable pandemic ever.
I really want 2020 to end that way.
Right? Let's end 2020 strong. Cannabis pandemic.
Right? Wait. Okay, cannabis pandemic could be negative though. As in like a whole bunch of plants get sick.
Okay.
How about
Mass intoxication.
right? That would be awesome. Okay, if the world were to end, I want it to be in a ginormous cloud covering the entire world.
Everybody
So-
everybody get high. Just if
Right?
we're gonna go out, everybody go out happy.
Yeah, but it's weird to be doing this during COVID. The way that the view of COVID has changed from when it first started to cannabis businesses being what's it called? What's the technical term for necessary? I suck with words. Just in general, not even today. Just in general.
Well, what are you trying to?
But being necessary. Yeah. So that dispensaries need to stay open during the pandemic type of deal.
Oh, essential.
Essential. That's the word. So that is something. But how it turned to we need to change the law in the middle of a pandemic as being essential is a little bit weird, but at the same time, it would make it easier for states to say they are essential businesses. But they prove a lot of really good points, a lot of same talking points for most legalization. It would lower the amount of resources that it would take to enforce the law, or to enforce cannabis law violations, to more tackle to serious and violent crimes. They state that Americans were arrested for marijuana 7 million times between 2001 and 2010, so that's a 9-year difference, and the vast majority of which were just for possession. Even as states legalized cannabis, police made more than 663,000 arrests, 92% of which was for possession last year alone. The homicide and sex crime units struggle to get evidence examined in a timely manner. That is also a very big one when it comes to testing. A lot of states are just kind of full of testing for what the green leafy substance that a police officer got off of somebody with a ticket, even. In some states, they have to process it as a test, even if it's like a ticket, a traffic ticket, because you can still take it to court. So yeah, it just kind of backs everything up. So a bunch of people basically are basically saying, hey, we have a lot more serious problems. We should probably deal with those. This also would make it easier for regulation to reduce youth access and keep adult consumers safe. Criminalizing marijuana has been a boon to the illegal market, where there are no regulations, product testing. Resourceful teenagers do not usually have trouble accessing marijuana. When it is illegal, underground sellers do not have to obtain age verification before making a sale, and they sell far more dangerous substances as well. Legalizing marijuana shrinks the size of the market available to teens, which substantially reduces their exposure to criminal activity in general. A profitable underground market supports the high demand for marijuana, much as it did during the prohibition of alcohol in the 1920s and the 30s. Calling marijuana a controlled substance is illusionary. I like that. I like that sentence right there. Calling marijuana a controlled substance is illusionary. Yep.
Yep. Nail on the head, man.
Yeah. Where it is illegal, we have no control. We cannot ensure the purity of the product, require the use of childproof containers, or determine who can buy and sell it. Over time, legalization will drive out the underground market, just like the alcohol bootleggers disappeared after repealing alcohol prohibition. That's a decent connection. Right now, the underground market still flourishes because marijuana is legal in some states and not in others. The most impactful way to take marijuana profits away from criminal organizations and reduce youth access is to regulate it, similarly to how we regulate alcohol and cigarettes. That's, yeah. I mean, this is a bunch of attorney generals, cops, and people who work in law enforcement that are
Who
realizing
spent their
this.
lives in law enforcement.
Yeah,
If you're going to take anybody's opinion on cannabis's effect in the community, it's going to be them.
right. And yeah, I mean, the way that, oh shoot, I forgot I'm in Firefox. But yeah, like just the fact that they they basically see that, hey, you know, 92% of the time that I got sent, that I arrested somebody, because it takes paperwork and time to arrest somebody. It's not just like you're under arrest and I'm going to go on to my next call. Nor is even writing a ticket for an officer. There's a lot more to it. That 92% of the times that they went there, chances are they're going to see cannabis crime, which is dumb. But yeah, it's interesting that a bunch of officers are seeing this, and there's a viable bill in Senate for this. That like, hey, we're like a step away type of deal. At least just vote on it. So
Yeah.
But yeah, this is one that you found. So I'm gonna let you take this one because I totally just realized that you put this one at the bottom here.
Yeah, look at that being sneaky.
Right.
Trump is petrified that pro-cannabis forces will roast him. This is actually interesting given the climate right now and that we're so close to the election. The president and some of his team have begun openly worrying about the drive to legalize and decriminalize marijuana might hurt him and fellow Republicans at the ballot box. The president believes that inclusion of marijuana initiatives on state ballots could supercharge turnout for voters who lean toward Democratic candidates and causes. Right? Basically, he doesn't want cannabis legal because he's under the assumption that it's just Democrats
Yeah.
or people who oppose him that are consumers of cannabis.
That's what I was saying with the Vermont thing. It's insane that there's still people who believe it, but it's been a bipartisan issue since the majority of states legalized, but or decriminalized. But like before, yeah, it was like Democrats or more liberal people, Republicans were more conservative. They're slowly kind of swinging both ways, but I mean they're still on their side, but like they're kind of going more towards the center. And yeah, like I never made that connection. I could never think of that kind of a connection. That like voters
That it was just Democrats.
yeah,
Like
this isn't an issue of, you know, who your president is or who your senator is or anything like that. This is a change in a law, which I bet if we polled like Democrats and Republicans to sit down and read through different laws and to see if they agreed or disagreed with them,
yeah.
there would be at least one that they didn't agree with, of both sides, depending on even their talking points. Whatever the Democrats are for, or whatever the Republicans are for, you see people voting across party lines quite often, and a lot more often actually in 2016, since 2016. But like, yeah, I don't know, like that connection is kind of far, but at the same time, like, yeah, I can see it. But yeah, I don't know. Go on with
Yeah.
your thing.
Yeah, that just digs under my skin, man. And it's like the assumption of just Democrats or the people who would oppose them. Those are the type of people that consume cannabis. Whatever. And this is where it gets kind of funny. According to one of the strategists, the president is keenly aware of how presidential elections nowadays can be won at the margins. Also, that the pot issue, also quoted saying that the pot issue is one of the many things he thinks could be a danger. He once told me it would be very smart for the Democratic Party to get as many of these on the ballot as they could. Decades ago, Trump had publicly abdicated for full-on legalization, arguing, quote, "We're losing badly the war on drugs, and that you have to legalize drugs to win that war. You have to take the profit away from these drug czars." At the same time, he also put blame on politicians who, quote, "don't have any guts to tackle the drug legalization." On the flip side, by his 2016 run for president, he was strongly against the legalization of cannabis. After being elected, had proposed the execution of drug dealers by firing squad.
I think I remember that.
Mm,
Oh no,
that
no,
was
there
it.
was what was it? Brazil? It was yeah, Brazil. I don't know which one is the one that where they like just shot drug dealers, like you could legally shoot drug dealers.
I don't know. I'll go back real quick. Or are you doing it?
Yeah, I can do it. Legally. Philippines.
Gotcha.
That's what it was. And I would say this would be the actual war on drugs. More than 7,000 people were killed in the brutal war on drugs in the Philippines between July 2016 and January 2017. Under instruction from the country's president, Rodrigo Duterte ordered Philippines police officers to kill anybody they believed to be connected to the drugs trade when he assumed office in June of 2016. State forces and vigilante groups have followed through on these orders ruthlessly.
That's some heavy dope, man.
And I think that's when I think that was where they connected it with Trump, because I think that he had mentioned something about him and probably called him a good guy or something like that. Like, I think that's what it was.
That's our country, man. This is our country today. Let that really, really sink in.
Yeah.
These people. Ugh. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm done.
I feel like, okay, so like presidential elections, I mean, they're done at the same time as Senate, and they're not for issue-based elections. Like federally, we don't do that, but state-wise, we do. You're gonna have voter turnout, no matter what's on the ballot. There's gonna be people who are just there to just vote for a president because that's the only thing that they know about. There's a lot of people that don't really know that there's more than just a president. They just think that Senate is somebody that, or Senate or just Congress in general, are just people who have applied for a job and they got it. But yeah, there's gonna be just people that there's people who actually fill out a ballot and they don't fill it out fully. They just check the president and
Yeah.
or whatever, take the card out. But yeah,
Wow.
like
Next week, that is something I really want to talk about, and you and I will go over this after. But I really want to talk about elections,
as far as
like voting,
like
importance.
yeah, and the different there's different kinds of party, or what is it called? Voters' choice or something. Runoff. Let's see. North Dakota. God, I fucking hate going on this website. North Dakota VotersFirst.org. Voter choice. That's what the technical term is, I think. But yeah, like the different ways that elections are counted.
Yeah. But yeah, I want to say that now so that way you and I can have the week to really dig into it. Obviously, our primary focus is cannabis, but as we get closer to the election,
yeah,
obviously, I think we'd be doing everybody a disservice to not.
and also talking about the election, it does go with cannabis, because maybe it's not on the ballot this year, might be on the ballot in 2022, and so like
hopefully people who have much more know-how and drive and organizational skills could get this through.
But at this rate, more act is going to go through and make it way easier for everybody.
Yeah, I really hope so, because I'm sorry, if we're banking on this shit.
Yeah. Well,
anyway,
let's end it with one of the this is going to be a daily or a weekly bit I will do. All right. So 2020 election in November. There is going to be an issue on the ballot. It's going to be called SR 4001, I think is what it's known on the ballot. Let me Google that. I Google this one way too often. Ballot measures. I even know like exactly where to click. Yeah, Senate Concurrent Resolution 4001. Senate Concurrent Resolution 4001 is basically a constitutional amendment may be proposed by initiative petition, so it doesn't get rid of petitioning and changing laws as a citizen. If signed by electors equal in number to 4% of the resident population, so it makes it so that it's 4% still of the population based on the last census. Federal census, so the one that we just had is going to probably, I don't know what the outcome of that is or when we even know it, but yeah, 4% of that number. The petition for a constitutional amendment may be submitted to the Secretary of State. An initiative to amend the Constitution may be placed on the ballot only at a general election. If electors approve an initiative for a constitutional amendment, the amendment must be submitted to the Legislative Assembly. The initiative is deemed, or the subsequent Legislative Assembly, if the initiative is approved by a majority of members of each House, Senate, and House, the Legislative Assembly, the initiative is deemed enacted. If the Legislative Assembly does not approve of the initiative must be placed on the ballot at the next general election. Not a next election, next general. If the majority of votes cast on the initiative are affirmative, the initiative is deemed enacted. All other provisions relating to initiative measures apply here too, to initiative measures for constitutional amendments. So this is only for constitutional. I am going to do one step further. We are going to draw a picture. Why? Okay. Sure. Alright. Paint. Let's make a paint picture. Alright. So you gotta measure. This would have been easier if I planned this. Measure. Alright. You got your measure here. God, this is...
Phil, this is turning into a train wreck.
Yes, I know.
Rapidly.
Alright. Well...
It's fucking hilarious, though.
Yeah. Alright, so you gotta measure, right?
We gotta measure.
So, one of the things that you'll need is 4%. So... I don't know. I'm just gonna do this. We're gonna use a pencil. So, you need 4%. Alright. That's how many signatures you need. Right?
Uh-huh.
So then it goes on a ballot. We're gonna make a pretty picture for that one. Yeah. I'm totally gonna save this for like next week.
I so fucking hope you do.
So you got a ballot.
We got a ballot.
You're on the ballot. All right. And if it's yes. Oh boy. Or no. All right. If yes, then it goes to Legislative Assembly. This is actually also how I know how to use Photoshop. This is the most I know in Paint is just about as much as I know in Photoshop. All right. Ledge ass. We're gonna call it ledge ass. Right, leg ass. We're gonna call it leg ass. I don't know. I must have misspelled it. Whatever. L ass. Okay. L ass. Legislative Assembly. All right. Then they can vote. Yes or no. All right. If yes, yay. Okay.
Okay.
If no, back to the ballot. And this ballot can only happen in November. There. My beautiful picture. Alright. So this right here is essentially what is being voted on in November. Alright? So right here, this is what it's going to turn into if you vote yes. Okay. If you vote no, you can essentially take this entire fucking thing. This entire fucking thing. Oh shit. Undo. There. Okay. If you vote no, that's how that works. Alright? This is about as easy as it gets. Okay? If you vote yes, and if you vote no, it's up to you which one you want to vote on. There's a positive and negative to each one. I'm just trying to explain it the best I can. So the only time that the ballot can happen is in November. If it's passed, it goes to another legislative assembly, which then debates and either passes or doesn't pass it. If they don't agree, it goes back to people again to make sure that you were okay with that in the first place. They're basically, you're saying, are you okay with this? Then you're saying yes, and then 4 years later, they're saying, are you sure you're okay with this?
Yep.
That's pretty much how that works.
Welcome to the shit show, kid.
So, that is 4001. I will have much better graphics. I swear. I will sit down and make something in After Effects.
I
for
made
it.
a note to make a flowchart on that.
Yeah.
One of us has to make something happen, because, homie.
Hey, my paint skills are awesome, alright? I will have you know. Okay, this layout, the general idea of this layout started in Illustrator, which is essentially Paint for lots of money. I mean, obviously, I didn't draw them by hand. I drew a couple things in this by hand, but yeah. So, I know how to use Paint, I swear. Yeah, another thing, let me set this up just because I I wanted to do this and I never remembered to do this. I'll just call it outro, whatever. I will also be kind of, it's not really a redo of the channel than anything, but I want to do this so I don't have to publicly post it because it's not fully done yet. But we'll be kind of redoing, well, not really redoing, we're going to be adding more to the layout on YouTube. There'll be a nice little banner up on top once I get done with that, and we'll also have a channel trailer, and we will be doing a lot more stuff than podcasts. We'll be probably making like a little bit of more deep dives. You know, that's something I wanted to do, but we also might be doing like interviews, kind of like what we were doing before. I might be starting to do those as well. But yeah, vote no on 4001 is what I'm saying. But
Yep.
honestly, just look at that picture. This sad, sad picture.
Don't look at that picture.
Just come on now. All right, look, you got. It's pretty. It's pretty. Okay. No, but like seriously, if you vote yes on this, this is what it'll look like, and if you vote no, you can get rid of an entire. Oh, whoops. You can get rid of that. So, up to you, whichever you think is best. Because there is two different aspects of it. The first one is the reason why it would want to be passed like that. It would basically allow a measure to be verified as far as you know, if it's good on its standing or if it needs to be added, like if stuff needs to be added to it.
Yeah.
So like if something just kind of is like, well, this is just going to create a loophole that they didn't think of, or this, you know, God forbid they're like, well, you know, for instance, the constitutional petition we were part of, they say, oh, well, 12 plants is it too much? I'm not sure if the wording says that they can change anything in it, or if they can propose a different measure on top of it, which is probably what would come out of that. Like if they said, you know, this isn't exactly the best, but we get what you're trying to say, and we're gonna try to pass something very similar. But it would allow that kind of cannibalization of that. But it would be also good in the fact of it would pass legal muster, essentially. And when you're dealing with constitution and stuff like that, that supersedes any statutory laws, so it's a little bit more important. I mean, both are laws are important just in general, but I'm just saying it supersedes a statutory. So that would be a positive to 4001. A negative one is exactly what I was saying before. It would give them an opportunity of saying, well, we don't like this. We'll be back on the ballot, but before it gets on the ballot, we'll pass a measure or we'll pass a bill that is very similar and or kind of just gets what we want done, and we'll basically be like, well, if yours passes, good luck. If people remember you in 4 years. But till then, we have this thing, which is possibly the polar opposite of what you wanted. So those are the positives and the negatives of it. That's just me spitballing it, but at the same time, yeah, that's basically what's at stake with that. This would be only for constitutional measures, not statutory. I'm sure that's probably next. But yeah, and honestly, as far as states that do constitutional petitions and passing measures for a constitution, there's very few states. I don't know the exact number, but North Dakota is one of a few states. So that's probably why this might sound shocking, is what I'm trying to say, and it's not as insane of a theory as it sounds. But yeah, essentially, yeah. But that's all we have. If you like this video, make sure to share it and check us out on YouTube at CannaTalkND, which is where you're watching this. I have not updated this ending script here, but if you have any friends or anything like that and you want them to watch and listen to CannaTalkND, they can go to cannatalknd.com, or they can search up CannaTalkND on YouTube, which will be youtube.com/c/CannaTalkND, all one word. But also you can just go to cannatalknd.com. It's much easier. Just forwards you there. It really doesn't do much. It just forwards you there. But if you like this show and want more, make sure to check us out. Canna Talk ND with Wilson on 95.9 Radio Free Fargo every Thursday from 4 to 5 p.m. And again, if you're not in the Fargo-Moorhead area, you can listen to it a few days later, or probably the next day on YouTube, and or the same night on podcasting platforms. That's Apple, Spotify. Yeah, let's see. What other platforms are we on? Spotify, Anchor FM, Breaker, RadioPublic, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts for the one person that ever uses that. Yeah, you can listen pretty much anywhere. We're fully everywhere. But if you want to listen to it live, you can also listen to it on radiofreefargo.org from 4 to 5 p.m. Usually his radio shows are pretty much a lot of really cool music. Like, he's got a really good choice in music, which, I mean, I know our choice in music, or my choice at least for my shows, are a little bit off, but that's because I can't play copyrighted music. I have to have the artist's permission, and that's the reason why you don't hear WAP as an intro song. But yeah, so, you know, they got that. But he's got a really good choice in music, and at around 4:20, I think it says exactly at 4:20, he's pretty punctual on this, unlike me. At 4:20, he starts the show and kind of talks about newsy type stuff, and might have some interviews and stuff like that. I know I'm reaching out to one person, not sure if it's going to be on a single video or if it's going to be on the radio show. I'm trying to kind of figure out what works best for them. And actually, first I need them to say yes. But yeah, for that, so check that out. Hit subscribe. And yeah, there's going to be more. All I'm trying to say is this isn't the only thing that's going to be on this channel, and Canna Talk ND is also on there, with the radio show is also on there. I mean, the channel is called Canna Talk ND, but either way, there'll be more. Just, yeah. Trust me, there'll be more. And it won't just be podcasts and long-form stuff. It'll be shorter, easier to swallow bits. Kind of working on that. Kind of up to how I do it and when I do it. But yeah, other than that, my name's Phil.
Hi, I'm Anthony.
And this has been Canna-Heads. We will see you guys next week on Sunday at 7:30 p.m. And I also made this really cool thing that has no sound yet, because I'm trying to clear the song with MusicBed, which is the service that we use. So no audio, but really cool. So I'm gonna finish it off with that. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week at 7:30 p.m. Bye.